Hello you lovely lot and welcome to a brand new video. My name is Katie and I thought we could do a little beyond the box for the May UpCrate. And of course, if you haven't watched it already, that original video is up where I unbox and go through things in a little bit more detail. So if you haven't already, I definitely recommend giving that a little click after this video. I also thought this was worthy of a beyond the box because I really enjoyed the supplies. I do, however, wish they had included more paper, but I say this a lot of the times. And to substitute the lack of paper, I used some of the grabby watercolour paper. Again, this has also been featured on my channel. The subject for this particular painting is going to be some sort of sea-dwelling character, and they've got a jellyfish stuck on the head, and that's what I went with. The background, I just went in with that Rembrandt ultramarine and then included some of that indigo on there because I mean I just love a bit of indigo and why not, but combined with the ultramarine it did something for me there. And once that was dry, I thought, yeah, we need another coat of that, so I pretty much went in and did the same. I was a bit more heavy with the indigo this time, but not to the point where it completely obscured that ultramarine. Of course, let me know down below if you're more ultramarine or more indigo in this instance. I am definitely more indigo. I know it's a slightly, ever so slightly, in my opinion anyway, yellow-toned blue, but I just seem to like that coolness of it more than the what the ultramarine has to offer. And that's not to say I don't like the ultramarine either, but that is just a personal preference and completely irrelevant. Mixing a little bit of that ultramarine with that red that we had, which I do believe was of the quinacridone variety, I thought we'd go for some cooler colours for the skin tone of this character, and I'm literally just adding the base layers down before I come back to it a little later. You'll notice I did a wet and wet technique there and then just smooshed it around and smoothed it out a little bit just because I wanted the skin to be a bit smoother, but I wanted that paint to flow a little bit quicker. And it was time to adopt a similar principle with this character's hair. For the actual character herself, i.e. the mermaid's, well, we'll say she's a mermaid's face and hair and body, I'm going for quite cool, muted tones there, and you'll see why in a moment when it comes to painting the jellyfish. However, I just quite like that. I really want there to be a good, strong contrast, and having a big difference between warmer colours and cooler colours just seemed to hit the right spot for me on this one. If you have watched the original unboxing video, you'll notice that those contrast of colours and warmths and cool tones, that's sort of how I worked through that painting then, and I kind of wanted to adopt the same principles here as well. Using a very light wash of the quinacridone red and some more of that purple tone I mixed in just to add a little bit of shadows there, it was time to also introduce some of the yellow, which was a good old-fashioned cadmium yellow, which is pretty much a staple in most watercolour sets. It's still looking a little bit cool at the moment, so adding some more of that red in there just brings out those, well, warmer tones. And as well, it also just kept the page wet so I could incorporate some more textures using that purple that I'd mixed up. One of the things I did notice about these paints, and again it's on a 100% cotton paper just like what was provided with UpCrate, is when it dries it just does go a little less saturated, and that's easily remedied by another layer, and maybe that's probably on me and I should have added more saturated colours to begin with, but hey, you know what, watercolours love being layered, so it was any excuse to carry on with that really. And as you'll see, as the layers progress and those contrasting tones sort of come through, it's looking a little bit more how I wanted it to. For the little tendrils, I mean they're not really tentacles, are they? I'm going to call them tendrils, or I don't know, the stringy bits of a jellyfish. I went straight in there with a yellow and incorporated some of that red in there again, just for those nice contrasting warm tones which really stand out against what I've painted in the background there. You will notice though that I don't really use the brush that was provided with UpCrate because they just keep providing tiny brushes with about 5 hairs in them for watercolours, and at least in my opinion and my experience, that's not going to hold much paint, and watercolours are meant to dance around the page a little bit, I feel anyway, apart from when it comes to detailing. But let's face it, when you've got a tiny brush and a substantially bigger piece of paper in comparison to that brush, you're going to be there for a very long time painting a very small area at a time, so it's okay to swap your brushes out. You totally have my permission anyway. As you'll see, whilst that yellow layer is still wet, that red one just blends quite nicely into it and creates a nice gentle gradient there without too much of the colour going wild. And whilst that's drying, I thought, well, let's add some hair detail in there because, you know, I do like a little bit of hair detail. And I've still managed to avoid using that UpCrate brush because I have a nice liner brush. I think they were in either a 5-pack or a 10-pack off Amazon. Pretty generic. I think they're all pretty much the same. And I find them pretty good for adding those line details there. A lot of you do ask about the detail brushes that I use, and like I say, the Amazon ones are fine, but if you're wanting something specific, I think it is the Royal and Langnickel or Royal something. They have a clear handle and they do a really good, long-lasting actually, rigger brush, and I definitely recommend them. They are a bit of a go-to if I can't put my hands on these Amazon ones. So as well as having sort of contrasting temperatures of colour there and obviously brightness and saturations of colour, I thought I would also go for some texture, and adding these lines in there for this character's hair really again just makes certain elements of this picture stand out. And at the end of the day, it is all just about having a play around with these supplies and seeing what you can do, and I don't know, pushing the boat out a little bit when it comes to experimenting with different textures, different colour temperatures, and of course, good old different contrasts. Again, using that purple that I'd mixed up earlier, it just added a really nice shadow to this yellow jellyfish thing that's going on here. And I do tend to find when you want to add a little bit of darkness to these warm colours, don't go straight for a black. If you're wanting to incorporate a blue in there, I definitely recommend using a purple as a transition colour. But if you're not going to use the blue, just use a deeper purple and it will work out quite nice. And it'll, I guess, look a little bit more natural, even though this is quite a supernatural looking picture going on here. But I'm hoping you understand what I'm on about without me having to waffle on about it too much. And whilst all that was drying and doing its thing there, I thought it was time to add some more details to the face. And again, that purple just seemed the right colour for her lips and adding some of those shadows in there. I quite like how pale she is and how much it stands out against all the other colours going on there. Even if they're cool or a little bit more warm, that pale contrast, I don't know, it just worked in a way that was pleasing to me, I guess is what I want to say there. I also thought this would be a good opportunity to give everything a bit of an outline. I didn't really want to leave some areas lined and some areas not. I wanted to keep it relatively consistent, and I'm really glad I did. And again, that purple that I'd mixed up, I think I might have added a little bit more indigo to it just to make it stand out a little more, but that worked out really well for just adding those details and making everything in the foreground pop a little bit more. At this stage, I was thinking, right, we need to add a few more highlights here, which is where that Talons gouache came in rather handy, and I mixed that in with some watercolours, which is, again, something I don't really experiment with very often, so if anything, that box offered me the opportunity to do that, and I just added a few dots of colour here and there, a few highlights, and again, that just made things pop out a little bit more. Of course, in contrast to that, I added a few more shadows to those stringy little bits of the jellyfish there, and again, just added a little bit more depth to the piece. I actually wish I'd added a little bit more depth to the actual character herself, just on the skin tones there, and in hindsight I probably should have done, but you know, we're finished now and I'm quite happy with how this Beyond the Box came out. I think I'll definitely keep using these supplies just on a personal level because they were quite fun and the colours were quite good, and they do incorporate well with my existing watercolour supplies there. Anyway, we are done with this painting. I do hope you've enjoyed watching. I hope you've picked up a couple of tips, whether it be through my rambling or just from watching what was going on the screen. There should be some more videos on screen that I think you're going to enjoy, so why not click on one of those if you want to watch some more stuff. In the meantime, thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you lovely lots soon. Bye!